So today we're going to be looking at parts of a story and the unreliable narrator. So first, I have provided you guys with some images of different types of conflict that you might encounter while reading a story. We have over here with Katniss and the soldiers, she is an example of man versus society, because she's fighting against the idea of dystopia. She doesn't want that type of society where everything is restricted. She wants freedom. And then we have Calvin and Susie fighting over here, and this would be an example of man versus man, because the two are fighting against one another. And this other image down here with the woman with the angel and devil on her shoulder is an example of man versus self. And then one more that I didn't provide is man versus nature, which is just a character that might be like trying to face survival, and there's other types of conflict too. But those are the specific ones. Then we have the plot structure, which first there's the exposition in the story, and that is where the characters are introduced, and then the setting, where does the story take place, and we are then led into the conflict of the story, which the conflict is one of those types that I mentioned before: man versus man, man versus nature, man versus society. And further, the conflict's complicated, and that goes into the rising action, which the rising action is the series of events the character is going to take to try and solve that problem, but they're not going to solve it. It's just these events are going to get more and more complicated, building up to the most intense moment of the story is the climax, which is the turning point where a character's perspective may change, or something might be seen differently, or just this dramatic twist on the story might take place. And that leads into the falling action, where the series of events that start to resolve themselves, leading to the resolution, which is when the problem in the story is going to be resolved. And then also there's suspense in a story. And suspense is when you have a character that might have a lot of anxiety or fear in the story, or it could be constant repetition of certain sights and sounds that might keep constantly repeating themselves in the story. An example of suspense is in the movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock. She ends up getting separated from her spaceship, and this causes a problem because if you get separated from such, that's her life source for air and life, and if she gets separated from it, she'll be stuck in space randomly floating around and will die because of lack of oxygen. But the suspense in the story is the constant heartbeat sound that repeats itself over and over again, or then all of a sudden the sound goes to dramatic silence, which silence you don't think is dramatic, but it makes your own heartbeat in the audience beat faster, and that's an example of suspense. And I have an unreliable narrator is also a part of the story. Sometimes it isn't. But an unreliable narrator is a narrator that you can't trust, because you might question if they are insane, or you might question if the narrator is lying just to try and persuade you to follow a certain viewpoint. But this is just like an example of what a reliable narrator will be in the story, and I provide a video to show that.
biggest mistake of his life. Didn't touch the cheese! He didn't have the cheese touch. It was worse than nuclear cookies. The only way to get rid of the cheese touch is by passing it on to someone else.
We'll get one for you too. Yeah, I love the color.
And so began the cheese touch frenzy. Friend turned on friend. It was madness until a German exchange student named Dieter Müller took it away that fateful day.
Beer has a cheese touch.
A cheese touch? Wie bitte? Ich verstehe nicht. Warum rennt ihr? Was soll das heißen, der Cheese Touch? He moved back to Düsseldorf and took the cheese touch with him. And so the cheese sits patiently waiting for its next victim. Wow. This is a terrible place.
So that's an example of a reliable narrator, because the one character that was telling the story was telling the events exactly how they happened in the story. And you saw that by the scenes, like how when he said something, it would repeat what he said. And that's showing reliability. You can trust this narrator. And then today we're going to be going over the Telltale Heart, which this is talking about an unreliable narrator, a narrator that you might not be able to trust. So we'll talk about that in class.